She's with me. I'm one of the good ones. I'm not like them. Those words. My white fiancé, the man I was going to build a life with, said that to a police officer while I was standing right there. He didn't say it to protect me. He said it to separate himself from me, to tell the world that his whiteness was a shield and my blackness was a threat he needed to be absolved from. This is my story. This is his. And this is how a single sentence, born from a place he never knew he had, tore our world apart. Let me give you a quick background of my story. My name is Lena. I am African American and I was in Mark's car. Mark is my fiancé. I used to love watching him drive. There was a confidence to it, a casual ownership of space that I'd always admired. That night, we were coming back from a friend's wedding. Mark was at the wheel, his tie loose, humming along to the radio, his free hand occasionally reaching over to squeeze my knee. We were talking about our own wedding just 6 months away. The final guest list, the cake tasting, the mundane, magical details of building a life together. I remember the exact thought I had. This is it, this is safety. It was a solid, warm thing in my chest. I had fought for this feeling. I had defended our love to my Aunt Carol, who'd pursed her lips and said, "A white boy from the suburbs, Lena. You sure you know what you're getting into?" I'd laughed it off. Mark was different. He was woke. He read the books. He went to the marches. He never made me feel like my blackness was a problem to be solved. He claimed he didn't see color. He just saw me. And for a long time, I believed him. I wanted to believe him. It was so much easier than looking at the cracks. The first flash of light in the side mirror was like a pinprick of ice in my veins. My body went rigid. "Oh, for God's sake," Mark muttered, his tone laced with annoyance. He glanced in the rear view, signaling to pull over. "Probably a tail light. What a hassle." The casualness in his voice was a universe away from the cold dread solidifying in my stomach. This was his normal, a minor inconvenience. For me, it was a high-stakes negotiation with a system that had never been designed to protect me. My father's voice, grave and steady, echoed in my head from when I was 16. "Baby girl, you get pulled over, you become a robot. No sudden moves. Yes, sir, no, sir. License and registration ready. You make yourself small. You make yourself harmless." But I wasn't driving. I was in the passenger seat. I felt exposed, my script torn away. "Evening, officer," Mark said, his voice easy. "Everything all right?" The officer's face was stern in the glow of the interior light. "License and registration, your rear tail light is out." Mark was already reaching for the glove compartment, fumbling for the papers. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, my eyes fixed forward. I was making myself small. I was making myself harmless. The beam of the flashlight lingered on me. It felt invasive, a searchlight on a creature that didn't belong. "This your vehicle, sir?" the officer asked Mark, his eyes still on me. "It is," Mark said, his confidence slightly fraying at the edges. "Is there a problem?" The officer ignored him. "Ma'am, I need you to step out of the car for me." My heart stopped. This was the script, but I was in the wrong role. "Step out," Mark's voice rose with a privileged indignation I knew all too well. "Why? She hasn't done anything. I'm the one driving." He was used to being heard, to his questions being answered. "Sir, I need you to remain in the vehicle," the officer said, his voice sharpening. "Ma'am, out of the car, now." I moved like a robot, my movements slow and deliberate. The cold rain soaked through my blouse in seconds. I was shivering, standing on the slick asphalt. Mark shoved his door open. "This is ridiculous," he yelled, stepping out. "You're harassing her because she's black." The words hung in the air, explosive and in that moment utterly unhelpful. He was escalating it. He was making it a race thing, but not in a way that protected me. In a way that made him feel like a hero. Another cruiser. My throat was tight. 2 officers now. The second one, taller, stood by his car, hand resting on his belt. "Sir, you need to get back in your vehicle," the first officer barked at Mark. "I will not." Mark's voice was a desperate, high-pitched screech. "That's my fiancée. You can't treat her like this." He was losing control. And when Mark lost control, he grasped for the nearest weapon, which was his own perceived innocence. The taller officer put a hand on Mark's chest. "Sir, calm down and step back." Mark's eyes were wide, wild. He was trying to find the magic words, the key that would unlock this nightmare with his white privilege. He looked right at the cop, his face pleading, and he found them. The worst possible words. He shouted, his voice cracking with fear and a desperate need to belong to the side of the men with the badges. He said, Officer, please, I can vouch for her. She's with me. I'm one of the good ones, I'm not like them. One of the good ones. Them. In that moment, the world didn't just stop, it shattered. Every laugh, every I love you, every plan for the future, every late night conversation, it all turned to dust, blown away by the toxic wind of those 5 words. I'm one of the good ones. He wasn't protecting me. He was divorcing himself from me. He was drawing a line in the sand, and on his side stood him, the good white person, and on the other side stood me, and my family, and my friends, and my entire race. We were them, a threat he needed to be absolved from, even from the passenger seat of his own car.
The silence in the car after the cops let us go was a physical presence. It was heavier than the rain, thicker than the fog on the windshield. I kept glancing at Lena, but she was a statue, her profile carved from stone, her eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the glass. The wipers swiped back and forth, a metronome counting down the last seconds of our life together. I could still feel the adrenaline buzzing in my teeth, a sickening, electric hum. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I opened my mouth half a dozen times, but the words wouldn't come. What could I possibly say? I'm sorry. It was so inadequate it was almost an insult. My mind was a frantic, scrambled mess, replaying the last 10 minutes on a loop, trying to find the moment where I'd lost control of the script. It was supposed to be simple. I'd seen the fear in her eyes, the same fear I'd seen in movies, the fear she'd tried to explain to me once when we watched a news story about a black man being pulled over. I'd held her and said, "That's awful, baby, but that would never happen to you. Not with me there." I actually believed that. I believed my presence was a shield. My whiteness was a get-out-of-jail-free card I could generously extend to cover her. When the second cop car arrived, my logic in its panicked state went like this. These are aggressive, probably racist cops. They see a black woman and they're looking for a reason. They see a white man getting agitated and they see a threat. I needed to de-escalate. I needed to speak their language. I needed to find the magic phrase that would make them see I was a reasonable person, a good person, and by extension, so was she. In the tornado of my panic, I grasped for the closest cliché I didn't even know I possessed. I'm one of the good ones. It was a plea, a desperate, pathetic attempt to find common ground with the men who held the power. In my head, I was saying, don't lump me in with the bigots you probably hate. I'm on your side, see? I'm a good white person. Now please treat my fiancé with the respect I, as a good white person, command. The moment the words left my mouth, the world didn't just stop, it inverted. I saw the cop's face first. His eyebrow twitched. It wasn't understanding or relief I saw there. It was a flicker of contempt, quickly masked by professional neutrality. He looked from me to Lena, and in that glance I saw the chasm I had just dug with my own tongue. Then I looked at her. The fear was gone. The anxiety was gone. It had been replaced by a hollow, absolute devastation. It was the look of someone witnessing the total collapse of their reality. She wasn't looking at the cops anymore. She was looking at me, and she was seeing a stranger. No, worse. She was seeing the enemy, dressed in the skin of the man she loved. The drive home was a funeral procession for our future. I kept waiting for her to scream, to cry, to yell. The silence was worse. It was an accusation. When we walked into our apartment, the apartment we'd picked out together, filled with the furniture we'd assembled together, the photos of us smiling on the walls, the air felt different. It was no longer ours. It was a crime scene. "Lena, baby, please," I finally choked out, my voice cracking. "Let me explain." She turned to me then, and the ice in her eyes could have frozen hell. "Explain what, Mark? Explain what those words meant, because I think I understood them perfectly." "I was trying to protect you." The words sounded weak and stupid even to me. "Protect me?" A bitter, hollow laugh escaped her. It was a sound I'd never heard from her before. "You weren't protecting me. You were protecting yourself. You saw a situation that was getting scary, and your first instinct was to throw me under the bus to save your own skin. To tell them, 'Don't worry, officers, I'm not like those other black people. I'm one of the good white people, and this one is with me, so she's probably okay too.' You drew a line, Mark. And you put yourself on the side with the badges and the power. And you put me, my father, my mother, my entire family on the other side. with them. That's not what I meant, I pleaded, the desperation making me dizzy. I was trying to de-escalate. I was trying to use my privilege to get us out of there. Your privilege, she shot back, her voice rising, trembling with a fury that had been building for years. You think that was using your privilege? That was you groveling at the altar of your own privilege. You were begging for their approval by distancing yourself from the black woman you supposedly love. Do you have any idea what you've done? Any idea? And then it started. The floodgates opened. It wasn't just about that night. It was about everything. It was about the time at the dinner party with my friend Jake when he made that joke about watermelon and fried chicken, and I just laughed awkwardly and changed the subject. She brought that up. You didn't defend me. You didn't want to make a scene in front of your white friends. It was about the time we were shopping on Rodeo Drive for her birthday, and the security guard followed us around the entire store. I told her she was being paranoid. You dismissed my lived experience because it made you uncomfortable, she said, her voice like shards of glass. You told me I was seeing things. It was about the time I told her she was so articulate. You thought that was a compliment, she said, shaking her head in disbelief. You didn't even understand the racist, paternalistic history behind that phrase. You just thought you were being nice. Every memory I had of our happy relationship was being relit, and in the new, harsh light of this truth, I saw the shadows I had willingly ignored. I saw my own blindness. I saw my own complacency. I had loved the idea of her, a strong, beautiful black woman, without ever truly wanting to understand the weight of what it meant to be her in this world. I wanted the aesthetic of a progressive relationship without doing the actual, difficult, uncomfortable work. The argument lasted for hours. It spiraled from that night to every microaggression, every dismissed feeling, every time I had prioritized my comfort over her truth. I ran out of defenses. My justifications crumbled into dust. I was left standing in the wreckage of our home, naked in my ignorance, finally seeing the canyon that had always existed between us, a canyon I had been too privileged, too arrogant to even see. She went into the bedroom and packed a suitcase. I stood in the doorway begging, crying. Please, Lena, don't. We can fix this. I can learn. I can do better. She zipped the suitcase closed and looked at me, her eyes full of a grief so profound it stole my breath. It's too late for that, Mark. The time for you to learn was before you promised to spend your life with me. The time for you to do better was before you reduced me to a prop in your performance of being one of the good ones for the police. She walked past me, into the living room. My eyes fell on the small velvet box on the bookshelf, our wedding bands. We picked them out just 2 weeks ago. The hope in that moment felt like a lifetime ago. Lena followed my gaze, then walked to the kitchen table. She slowly, deliberately, twisted the engagement ring off her finger. The diamond caught the light one last time. She placed it on the wooden surface. The soft click was the loudest sound I had ever heard. This isn't about anger, Mark, she said, her voice finally calm, but it was the calm of absolute finality. This is about survival. I cannot build a life, a family with a man who, in a moment of crisis, sees my blackness as a problem he needs to be absolved from. I need to protect myself. And that means I need to get as far away from you as possible. She picked up her suitcase and walked out the door. It didn't slam. It closed with a soft, definitive click, and I was alone. The first week was a blur of denial and self-pity. I drank too much. I called her phone over and over, only to be sent to voicemail. I texted long, rambling apologies that she never answered. I was the victim in my own mind, the guy who made a stupid mistake and lost everything. I wallowed in it. I replayed the traffic stop, but in my version, I was the tragic hero who just said the wrong thing. But then the silence from her began to sink in. The emptiness of the apartment became a mirror. I started to actually listen to the words she had screamed at me. I Googled microaggressions. I read articles about interracial relationships. I stumbled upon the term white fragility and felt a jolt of recognition so sharp it was painful. I bought books I should have read years ago. So you want to talk about Race by Ijoma Oluo, Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. I didn't just read them, I devoured them. And with every page, a new layer of my ignorance was stripped away. It was excruciating. It was like undergoing surgery without anesthesia. I saw myself on every page. The man who said, "I don't see color." The man who got defensive when called out. The man who believed his intentions mattered more than his impact. I finally understood that my good intentions were a shield I used to protect myself from the accusation of being racist, without ever doing the work to actually be anti-racist. I saw, with horrifying clarity, that my comment to the cops wasn't a one-off mistake. It was the logical endpoint of a lifetime of unexamined bias. It was the seed that had been watered every time I remained silent in the face of a racist joke, every time I dismissed Lena's feelings, every time I clung to the myth of my own inherent goodness. That night under pressure, the real me, the unexamined me, had spoken, and he had destroyed the most beautiful thing in my life. I wasn't the victim, I was the perpetrator. I had inflicted a deep racial trauma on the woman I loved, using the very system she feared as my weapon. The weight of that truth was crushing. I stopped trying to call her. What could I possibly say? I finally get it. It was too little, too late. The damage was done. I spent months in that apartment, a ghost haunting the scene of my own crime. I looked at the photos of us and I didn't see happiness anymore. I saw my own blindness. I saw the invisible burden she had been carrying every single day, a burden I had added to, not lightened. The love I felt for her was still there, but it was twisted and poisoned by my own regret. I had lost her. Not because of a silly argument, not because we fell out of love, but because the foundation of our relationship was built on a lie. The lie that I saw her as an equal, when deep down, in a place I never dared to look, I never really had.
A year. It took a year for the sharp, jagged pieces of my heart to even begin to dull. The first few months were the hardest. I moved in with my cousin, and I slept on her couch, wrapped in a blanket of a grief I couldn't explain to most people. How do you tell someone your fiancé died when he's still walking around, breathing the same air? I went to therapy. I talked about the betrayal, the humiliation, the profound sense of being unseen. I learned that the trauma wasn't just from what Mark said. It was from the death of the story I told myself about us, about him, about the world. I had believed we were the exception. I was wrong. I threw myself into my work. I started writing again, channeling the pain into words. I reconnected with friends who understood, who didn't need me to explain why I'm one of the good ones was a death sentence for our relationship. I built a life without him, brick by painful brick. It was quiet, but it was mine. It was honest. I heard through the grapevine that he was a mess. A part of me, the part that had loved him, felt a pang of sadness. But a larger part, the part that had to survive, felt nothing. His pain was his to carry. I had carried enough. Then, on the anniversary of that night, a package arrived at my new apartment. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. My blood ran cold. It was a small, flat box. I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity, or maybe closure, got the better of me. Inside, there was no letter, no plea for forgiveness. There was only a single, worn, leather-bound journal and a USB drive. With trembling hands, I plugged it into my laptop. It was a single audio file. I clicked play.
Lena, if you're listening to this, it means you received the journal. Please don't delete this yet. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking for you to come back. I know that bridge is burned and I was the one who lit the match. I need you to know that I finally heard you. This journal, it's everything. It's my journey through every book you tried to get me to read, every article, every painful memory I re-examined. It's me finally holding a mirror up to myself and not looking away. It's me realizing that I'm one of the good ones was the truest thing I ever said, because it revealed the rot I was carrying inside. The rot of thinking that being a good white person was a permanent state, not a daily practice. The rot of believing my love for you could somehow immunize me from the racism baked into this country and into me. I was in love with the idea of you, Lena. I was in love with the image of us. But I didn't have the courage to love the reality of you, the reality of your blackness, your history, your pain. I failed you. Not just that night, but every day I refused to see the world through your eyes. I am so sorry. Not for me, not to make myself feel better, but for the profound and lasting harm I caused you. You deserved a protector, and I became another source of danger. You deserved to be seen, and I made you feel more invisible than ever.
I listened to the entire thing, tears streaming down my face silently. It wasn't the desperate, justifying apology from a year ago. This was different. This was accountability. It was the sound of a man finally breaking himself open and doing the work. I picked up the journal. I flipped through the pages. It was filled with his handwriting, notes from books, painful deconstructions of his own past behavior, raw, unfiltered shame, and eventually a determined plan to do better. To be better. Not for me, for himself. He didn't ask for a reply. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He was simply bearing witness to his own failure and offering me the one thing he never had before, the truth. I never wrote back, I never contacted him, but I kept the journal. It wasn't a symbol of our love. It was a symbol of my survival. It was proof that my pain had been real and that my decision to leave had been right.
Sending that journal was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was like mailing my own shame across the city. I didn't know if she would read it or listen to the recording or just burn it, and I had to be okay with that. This wasn't about absolution. It was about amends, true amends. I started volunteering with a nonprofit that works on racial justice education. I didn't do it to be a hero. I did it because I needed to put my new understanding into action, quietly, without fanfare. I started having the difficult conversations with my family, with my friends, that I should have had years ago. I learned to listen more than I spoke. The work is ongoing. It will be for the rest of my life. I still think about Lena every day. I probably always will. But the pain is no longer a sharp sting. It's a dull ache, a reminder of the cost of ignorance. She was the catalyst for my awakening, and for that I will always be grateful, even as I am forever sorry for the price she had to pay.
Life moved on. I met someone else, a man who didn't see my blackness as a novelty or a problem, but simply as a part of the beautiful, complex tapestry of who I am. A man who didn't need me to teach him the basics of human decency. We got married last spring. It's a quieter, more peaceful love. A love built on a foundation of mutual respect, not on the shaky ground of performative wokeness. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Mark had done the work sooner, but I don't dwell on it. The before and the after are no longer two warring countries in my mind. They are just parts of my history. The story of me and Mark isn't a love story. It's a cautionary tale. It's a story about the chasm that can exist between love and understanding, and how, sometimes, love isn't enough to bridge it.